This episode is brought to you by EFG Holding, a trailblazing financial institution with a universal bank in Egypt and the leading investment bank in the Middle East and North Africa.
So I really, after graduating, I had two doors. The military came knocking, and the U.S. Marines had a massive drive that year in our campus, and they're again, this is right after 9/11, so they were looking for Arabic-speaking brown
Of
folk and
course.
and
Of
and and
course.
those that could handle both sides of the equation, the U.S. and the non-U.S. And it was quite appealing. They do present a very good lifestyle between the ability to go to different countries. You're living on a base. You're part of a strong brotherhood or a community. So I actually went as far as going through the whole routine. And on the day of signature, I pulled up to the recruiting office, and those of you who've seen them, they're just usually in strip malls in the U.S. somewhere. And I sat. I was meant to show up at 9 a.m. to sign the paperwork and get indoctrinated and proceed with my basic training. I sat in the car and I leaned back and I'm like, there's no coming back from this. Once you
Yeah,
ink
yeah.
once you ink that
Of
paperwork, they
course.
own you for a good four
Of
to five
course.
years, right? Uh,
And there's a minimum time that you have to stay with them?
yeah, absolutely. If I don't remember correctly, it's either 4 or 5 years, and if you break
Okay,
it, you're
okay.
AWOL. You're absent without leave,
Oh, really?
and
Oh, wow. You're a deserter.
and there's consequences.
Of
it's
course.
so I
Of course.
I I sat in the car and I just something told me that this was not the right time. So I drove home. I got a call from the recruiter going, "Hey, you didn't show up." Blah 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 blah. And I was like, "Look, I'm not feeling well. I'm really sick." And interestingly enough, as life always does, it presents you with surprises. And that night, I got a phone call, or that evening, I got a phone call from Macy's, the Macy's organization, and it said, "Hey, look, we're having this." Day in the life of a Macy's executive. It's a full day. You get to come in and you get to see a whole bunch of departments, and you get to follow a bunch of executives around to kind of see what they are. And if this is something you're excited about, we get you into this executive training program, and then you do a couple of years, and you start a great career in retail. And retail was not on the radar. This was, I mean, I worked retail shop floor, but
Yeah.
I never at all was fascinated by what happened behind the
The
curtains.
management side.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. So I said, well, you know what? I'm not doing anything that Friday, and I can kick the can down the road with the recruiter for a little bit more. And I showed up, and at the end of the day, they make that. What I didn't know, it was a massive interview, right? They don't tell you is at the end you'll actually get a job offer if they selected you. And I got a job offer at the end of at that day at 6 p.m. And they said, look, we're going to give you the weekend to think about it, and we're going to need your answer on Monday morning. And I said, well, if I start, when do I get to start? They're like, well, you signed the paperwork on Monday. You're starting on Tuesday. And I'm like, okay. So I went home and I had, behind door number one, U.S. Marines, and behind door number two, work in Macy's. And I figured, you know what? The Marines are always going to be there.
That's
There's
right.
no interview process. Whenever you want to come
Yeah.
in, you can come in, right?
Yeah.
But Macy's, this is a shot. Let me see.
Well, it's also much less of a commitment. I mean, you can walk away when you want to.
Very true. Very, very true.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I said, I'm curious about how retail works. Let me just go check it out for a couple of months. Worst case scenario, I'll just come back. and
Yeah.
and that spawned a career that lasted almost 2 decades. I started as an assistant planner level one, which is the first rung in the ladder, and I found myself as a director of planning on the end of it, which is kind of like the top of the food chain in my discipline, which is merchandise planning. And then I got a random call on a beautiful morning, and hey, I'm a recruiter. I work for this company called Altair. I said, sure. And he's like, have you heard of Dubai? And I'm like, yeah, everybody watches National Geographic at the time, and they were building the Palm, and everything was going on. It was the heyday of Dubai rising to what it is today. And they said, well, look, this company in Dubai
Yeah.
just signed up the first franchise rights to Bloomingdale's, the first Bloomingdale's outside of the US. Would you be up to meeting the CEO? She's going to be in DC, and we're recruiting for 123. And I said, okay, sure. And then, fly me to DC, and I'll meet that CEO and we'll see what we see. So I end up meeting this lady named Shireen Al Khatib. And those of you who don't know, she's a titan in the retail space of the Middle East. She was the CEO of Altair, then she bounced around a little bit, and then she became CEO of Majid Al Futtaim Retail. Then she became CEO of Majid Al Futtaim Mall. So everything from Mall of the Emirates to Mall of Arabia and Egypt and in between. So I got to meet her, and I just was celebrity
Hmm.
struck. This woman was a trailblazer by for her gender, for the retail space in the Middle East, for what she was, trying to do, bringing all these amazing brands to the Middle East, like the Gucci's and Pradas and Valentinos, and whatever she was going to offer me, I was just going to take right then and there. I just wanted to work under her. I wanted to learn from her. I wanted to, absorb everything this woman was all about. So I clicked with Shireen so much that after the call or after the face to face, she's like, "You're coming with me to Dubai," and that was it. That was May of 2008. I joined Altair as the senior vice president of merchandise planning. The goal there was to build a merchandise planning organization that handled the expansion of the department store world, which is Harvey Nichols, Bloomingdale's Dubai, Bloomingdale's Kuwait. And along that journey, I was just stacked on more and more responsibility, and until I did that for about 7 years, looking after about 220 stores and three department stores until the entrepreneurial bug bit again.
So before you keep going, Mo, so this we're up to, so 7 years with Al Tayr. This brings us to what year?
So 2008 to, I want to say, 2012. No, I'm still with Altair till 2019. Okay.
Aha.
But and I get to Dubai 2008, 2 years into being in Dubai. Life hands me a beautiful gift, which is my two best friends, almost brothers from the Saudi era, who we were kind of zigzagging through life together. And
Yeah.
I had left behind in New York City. Both within a span of a month got jobs and moved to Dubai. So the three
Isn't that
musketeers,
funny how that happens,
I
huh? It's
absolutely.
amazing.
I've known these guys for 38 years, and we find ourselves in Dubai under the same roof in 2008. So, as guys do, we got bored of talking about cars and vacations, and we started to look at how do we keep ourselves more intellectually stimulated. And we started investing in the ecosystem of startups in 2010. And our first investment was this startup called Market VIP, which was an Oasis 500 graduate, which was an incubator accelerator out of Jordan. And it was the first real apparel and beauty e-commerce platform. Marca VIP. They sold clothes of the Tommy Hilfigers and the Bulgari
Hmm.
perfumes, and
Yeah.
we collected money from about 20 guys, and we made a sizable investment. And through that investment lens, I started to understand what was happening in the digital arena in the Middle East around 2010, right? Which was sub 1%, right? There weren't many
Absolutely. I
e-commerce.
mean, it was really at the ground level, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Souk,
Yeah.
Ronaldo had just kicked off
Yes.
Souk, and there
Yes.
was no Namshi, there was no Noon, there was no nothing. So I started to scratch my head and obviously learn a lot about what was happening in the digital arena. And then I went to my chairman alongside my partner in crime, Khalid Al Tayr, and we convinced Mr. Ubaid. So my chairman was Mr. Ubaid Al Tayr. And for those of you who don't know who Mr. Ubaid Al Tayr is, he doubled up as the Minister of State of Finance of the UAE up until about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And we, as the chairman of this conglomerate, Altair, which does a lot more than retail, we talked to him about our whole universe is brick and mortar, yet everything is moving towards digital. We don't have a digital strategy. What should we do?
And of course, in the rest of the world, that was already happening. I mean, all the brick and mortar companies were already, moving full steam ahead on the into the digital world.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
we as a region as a whole, we're still squarely stuck in open more stores, open more malls, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I would come to him with all these data, and Khaled would come to him with all this data, and 9 months of perfusive nagging. The ask was fire Mo, okay, give him some money, and let him figure out what our digital strategy is. What are we going to do about all this?
So remove you from the day-to-day running of what you had been doing up until that point.
Correct, which was 7
Yeah.
years of senior vice president, merchandise planning,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, interesting.
That's exciting,
Uh,
Mo. That's really exciting
I
for you.
know. I am
Yeah,
so
yeah,
lucky.
yeah.
To have been right time, right place, and
And to have been able to convince them.
and to have been able to convince him.
Yeah.
So he did. He fired me, gave me the basement of the building, and gave me a little bit of money and said, "Go figure this thing out." And with the help of an amazing group of people, well, finding an amazing group of people, and the help of an amazing group of people, we built a company called Altair Digital. And Altair Digital, most people will not know it, but it is actually the holding company that built and runs the likes of The Gap online in our
Yeah.
part of the world,
Yeah.
Mamas and Papas online. And my most proudest achievement is UNAS. And UNAS, for those of you who don't know, is now the region's largest marketplace for luxury goods. We launched it in 2014 December, and it was a complete moonshot, for lack of a better word, off of a really long flight back from Milan to Dubai, and Khaled and Mo being overly ambitious to conquer the universe, and in 6 months we managed to convince the likes of Gucci and Prada and Valentino to believe in this massive vision of being able to deliver handbags in 2 hours or less across the UAE.
You know, Mo, what's interesting is that you had 20 years in the US in a corporate world. Then you had about, what, 15 years with Altair, also corporate. But you felt a need to break free again, which, this entrepreneur bug wasn't always there, actually. You were very much a corporate guy, but
Yes and
but
no.
something shifted.
Yes and no, because
Yeah.
Altair's experience for me, that pivot out of merchandise planning into digital, was an
Yes.
intrapreneur. Okay, so and
Right.
that's, for those who may not necessarily feel that being an entrepreneur is right for them, there's absolutely nothing standing in between you and getting a flavor of being an entrepreneur within the corporate confines, if you have the latitude to be able to reinvent yourself and take
That's
on,
right. That's a good point. Yeah.
because even though it was within the construct of a big corporation, it was still a young baby that was, heavily misunderstood, and I had free reign to kind of paint the canvas the way I want to.
Yeah.
So it fulfilled my entrepreneurship, but kept a steady paycheck of every 28 days. And at the end of the day, it's somebody else's money, which meant it was somebody else's baby, but I got to really get to, to
Play. You
play.
got to
I did
play.
get to play.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's Christmas of 2018. I take my wife on a vacation, and while we were sitting sipping coffee on the way back to Dubai, I look at her and I say, "I don't want to do this anymore." And she goes, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "I don't want to go back to what I was doing." And she's like, "Are you insane? Like, you finally got it all to work and everything is humming, and you know, yeah, of course, it rears its head in either some frustrations or just long hours. But when and along the journey, every time I've gone against my instinct, I've paid a dear price. So fine tuning the ability to truly listen to your gut and have the courage to actually listen to your gut is it's a funny thing. So I said, I don't want to do this anymore. She's like, "So what are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to go home and I'm going to quit." And she's like, "You're out of your mind. What are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know." She's like, "You don't have anything lined up?" I am. I had just had my twins, and they were a year old, and I was 39.
Okay. So yeah, you're
Okay.
you're at that phase where you should not be doing this at all.
My wife thought, she's like, "We have two babies. We have, as any family, rent and cars and bills,
Of
and
course, of
and you know,
course. These are the years where you're earning and you're yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
I'm not independently wealthy by any definition, and she's like, they love you, and the entire family is the most amazing experience of my life, because not only were they my bosses and my comrades and my colleagues, I was one of their adopted members. I went to
Yes,
their
yes.
events and their family gatherings and the
Yeah.
majlises, and I'm till this day,
It felt like family.
they
Yeah,
are
yeah,
fam. I till this day,
yeah.
I see them and I hang out with many of their members, and I'm just so tight with them. So,
Mhm.
anyways, I said I know, and she's like, but what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. And she's like, but you should line something up before you quit. And I said, I know, but no. The only way I'm going to do this is if I burn the boats. Okay,
So you didn't yet have the idea for GrubTech. You left before anything was apparent.
nothing.
Interesting. Okay.
I strongly believe, for those of you who don't know what burn the boats, if you want to take an island, you have to burn the boats in order for no recourse, no return, no safety
Yeah.
net, and
No way out.
no way out. And there's a
Yeah.
story from the
Yeah.
conquistadors for another time that we can talk about. But basically, I needed to burn the boats. I needed to get rid of the golden handcuffs that had me dependent on a fat paycheck every 28 days, that kept me in a lifestyle that made me comfortable. And
Mhm.
the only way was to break that, and then whatever comes out of that would be what I want to do. So, long story short, I walked into my boss's office with a brown letter, and on January 2nd of 2019, and I said, I'm leaving. And it didn't go well. And take a sabbatical, go on another vacation, really
Yeah.
think about it. I mean, every help that they can offer for me to reconsider, and I turned all of them down, and I exited the business in November of 2019, but by summer I had been, officially out of the business, and I was more of a
Right.
consultant role of the
Sure.
transition
Sure.
now. And yeah, so I that's how I quit, and didn't have
And
anything
then
lined up.
let's go into the beginning of GrubTech. And you said you have two
I
co-founders.
do.
Are these part of the Saudi crew?
One of
The
which,
the, the
yeah,
school friends?
the one of which is my childhood friend I've known for 38 years, and yeah. So as part of the decompression of a multi-decade career in corporate, I decided I was genuinely going to take the summer off, which was my first real summer vacation in God knows how long. And I used Lebanon as a base. My wife is Lebanese, and that's where we were stationed during the summer. And I was bouncing around Barcelona, Amsterdam, blah 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 blah. And I got a phone call from Omar saying, "Hey, listen, man, I just invested in this cloud kitchen." And I said, "What is a cloud kitchen?" And he goes, "You really need to come and see this, man. It's a delivery only kitchen that makes food for multiple brands, that sells on Talabat and the likes of." I said, "Why did you invest in that? You know nothing about restaurants, nothing about food." He's like, "No, I think this is going to
Yeah.
be a big thing." And then he's like, "When are you back in town?" I said, "Actually, interestingly enough, I got to come in and sign some paperwork for my exit and my end of service or whatever. So I'm just going to pop in for a few days." He's like, "When you come in, just call me." So I got back to Dubai, leave my family behind, and he's like, "Come, let me show you what I invested in." And he was a seed investor in this cloud kitchen called Icon at the time. And he goes, "Can you help these guys out since you're unemployed and not really doing anything?" I said, "Sure, let me come and take a look." Right. And I walk in through the cloud kitchen, and my immediate epiphany was, this is a distribution center. This is not
Yeah.
restaurant. They
It's operational. Yeah.
everything is cooked outside of the box, and it's delivered at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you assemble it in sandwiches form or salad form or whatever, and ship it out, except it happens in a short window of time, right? Lunch and dinner. But there's no tech for any of this. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, we've been doing this in retail for years. Nobody's
Yeah.
done this for food. They're like, nope, doesn't exist.
But Mo, your timing was unbelievable. This is
I
summer,
know.
and then COVID hits in March of the following year.
Yes,
You're
ma'am.
golden. You're golden.
I know. I
That's
know.
unbelievable.
It, luck.
Luck. Yeah.
Just
Well, my experience of doing these interviews is that the amount of people who line up an idea, line up a business, or in their personal life, um, something happens, and it's always luck that somehow changes that equation or makes or propels the idea somehow either faster than it would have happened otherwise. You know, the idea is there. You've done the work, you've done the homework, but that indescribable element is luck.
It sure is. It's this
It's
old
amazing.
adage of timing in life is everything.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to move into a slightly different area.
Sure.
We have already mentioned that you had some pretty important pivots in your personal life. I'd like to discuss that now. So take a bit of a step back from the professional. And you mentioned to me that, well, first of all, you're the brother of Marwa Al Fayed. And
That's
Marwa
true.
was, of course, Omar Samra's wife. And
That's
Omar
right.
is an old friend of our show. He was in our first season. And
That's
he
right.
talked at length about Marwa, of course, in
Yes.
his in our discussion. And of course, Marwa passed away when their daughter was born, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Was she older than you, Mo, or younger?
No, so I have twin sisters. Marwa has a twin named Rahab, and Marwa. They came 5 years after I came.
I see.
So they are my two young sisters.
Right.
Marwa passed away when she just a couple of days shy of her 31st birthday.
And that was in Florida, I know.
That
Where you
is,
were there at the time?
yeah. No, I was actually in
No,
Dubai.
you were already in the Middle East. Yeah.
I was in Miami at the time. My father, our father, is an OBGYN. He's a physician, as I mentioned, he's a physician, and he lives in Miami, Florida. So Marwa was getting ready to have her baby during,
Yeah.
the last couple of, or the last trimester, last couple of months. She felt dad could be of help, given that that's what he does for a living, right?
Of
Deliver
course. Of
babies.
course.
So she went to Miami to, get her nest in order and get the baby stuff and everything. But she was actually living here in Dubai as well with Omar. They had
Yeah.
just got into Wild Ganabana, Omar's,
Yes.
adventure travel agency, and
Sure.
she
Sure.
she went to visit dad, get some tests done, and buy some baby stuff and have her baby and turn around and come back.
Yeah.
But life is not always
No.
roses,
No.
and
That must have been a very hard time for all of you, I'm
it
sure.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, it absolutely.
And in today's world, no one expects a healthy young woman to, to pass away after having a baby. I mean,
No,
these things don't happen anymore. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your wife. So your wife is Lebanese.
my wife,
You have
I
twins. Did
do.
you have more children after that?
No, so my wife is Lebanese, and the interesting story in that department is
You met in
we
Dubai?
met in Dubai. Now, I don't know if I should be admitting this on air or in podcast. Amani is actually my third wife. I have been horrible in selecting my life's partners and had a series
Oh
of.
wow, Mo. We should have gotten to this at the beginning of the
I,
show.
maybe
This is
we
a show on its
maybe we
own.
can cut it up. But I've been married twice before I married my
Oh, I
wife.
didn't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
both 7 years long, and the 7 year itch statistics is absolutely correct. I mean,
And where were they from?
randoms. So my first one was actually an Iranian American. I was married to her to 7 years minus 1 day. The second
Uh-huh.
one was pure American, Anglo-Saxon from Boston. I was
And this is your American phase, so we can cut up your life in
Yeah,
phase 1 and 2 by the
but it
wives,
was. And
right?
then I came to the Middle
Yeah,
East, and I said, well, I failed twice. Let me give it a shot one more time, and I'm extremely happy I did because
that's
I love
wonderful.
my wife to
And so you
bits.
met in Dubai?
I met in Dubai, and every romantic story, we fell in love, and obviously it was headed in the right direction, and we got married. And interestingly enough, she woke up one morning and she had a little what looked like a pimple on the side of her neck. And she, babe, this thing really hurts. I'm like, don't mess with it. Just leave it alone. It'll go away as you do with all pimples. And a few days later, that pimple became a little bigger and bigger and bigger. And within a week's time, this thing was the size of a golf ball, which obviously created a lot of alarm for both of us. And we raced to the hospital. We saw a slew of
Is this
doctors
before the twins were born or
before
after?
before the twins were born.
Before.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and we ran over to the doctors, and what is this? And they took a biopsy, and unfortunately, it was stage 4 lymphoma, cancer.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, and
Stage 4.
stage 4. in a
Huh.
span of,
How old was she at the time, Mo?
she was 29 years old. And
You know that I had lymphoma
did
as
you
well.
really?
Yeah,
How
yeah.
long did how long?
But it's unusual that it had happened to your wife at that age because it's normally a teen disease or a post 60-year-old
That is
disease.
correct. That is correct.
Very
Very
unusual.
unusual, and interestingly enough, it was diagnosed a day to the day, I should say, a year after her father's diagnosis. Allah yarhamah, she unfortunately he didn't make it. Um,
Also the same?
Same.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
absolutely the same. So, I don't know, genetics, environmental, a lot of weird stuff was happening in Lebanon during, the
Yeah,
multiple wars. Who
yeah,
knows, right?
yeah, yeah.
So we
Alhamdulillah, she's okay now.
she's been in remission a good 10 years. So I'm very proud of that,
That's wonderful.
and we're blessed to
That's amazing.
we're blessed
And
to
the amazing thing is that she was able to have babies after because that's a potentially not likely.
No, no, and hence the twins, obviously, and it's a human assisted. Let's put it that way.
Of course, well,
Y-
yeah, why not? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
that's what medicine's there for, right? Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
Well, it's interesting because my story, I got it. So I have two boys.
Okay,
I have an 18-year-old and I have a
mashallah.
16-year-old. And when I was pregnant with my 16-year-old, I had complications and I had a very difficult end of pregnancy.
Okay.
And he was premature. And after he was born, I was diagnosed
Oh,
7 weeks after he was born.
jeez, that's
Yeah,
a tough period
with
too. Yes.
Hodgkin's, yeah.
Yeah.
And alhamdulillah, it's been 16 years, and
Knock on wood.
he's massive. I mean, it had no impact on him, thank God. But
God
obviously,
bless.
I had been sick being pregnant.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I mean, but that's hard on a couple. That's hard on a family.
I tell you, and the reason when you ask me about my personal pivots, these are two areas I typically shy from surfacing them on podcasts. But as they've happened about a decade ago, I'm getting more and more comfortable sharing both of them for two various reasons. And if you allow me, the reason behind sharing of the two are the following. I'll start with my wife because it's the one that I'm
Please go ahead.
more comfortable, and you would relate. You've walked that path. The resilience I saw on a fragile human being looking down the barrel of basically a terminal disease, for lack of a better word, and the arduous treatment that you endured in
What did she do? Chemo?
chemo. Absolutely. I mean, it was a vicious because it was stage 4. It was over 11 sites, ovaries, lungs, brain. I mean, it was everywhere. She was lit up
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
Christmas tree. This was not a
yeah, yeah.
local story.
Alhamdulillah, she was young. I think being young makes a massive
Massive
difference in this
difference.
situation.
Massive difference. And I'll never forget the first chemo session, and we're terrified and we don't know what to expect. We've spoken to everybody and it's horror stories, right? You lose your hair, you're throwing up, you
Yeah,
lose weight. It's not a pleasant experience by any measure. And I'll never forget my wife's courage and the brave face she had on. She did not shed a tear. She laughed with all the nurses. She went and visited every single child in the ward and made balloons and laughed with them. And she treated it as if she was taking a flu shot. And
yeah.
if it was me, I don't think I would have been able to get out of the cab.
You would, because it's so grave, Mo. You're in such a dire situation. You don't have a choice. What are you going to
I,
do?
I, the you both to have gone through this experience, you solidify the testament of courage and standing in front of adversity with pride and dignity, okay, and coming out at the end of that. And no matter what has happened over the 10 years from that moment onwards, when things got super difficult in the startup world, and those of you who are entrepreneurs know, you will come to a point in which you barely have enough money to make next month's payroll, okay, and your raise is
Yeah,
stuck in the ether. And I reflect back on my wife's smile as she's undergoing this horrific treatment, um, and coming out at the end of it as the brave soldier that she did, just like you. And I hold on to that throughout all my difficult times. If she
yeah,
could do
yeah,
that, I can do anything. you
Yeah,
know?
that's exactly right. It's
You
exactly
know?
right. I mean, nothing is daunting after that experience.
No, no, and I use that so frequently through my challenges because of the courage she's taught me through that experience. And Marwa's case, that's an interesting one. So, being young in your 30s, you're chasing the business classes, the first classes, the Rolex, and then the Rolex is not enough. I want an AP, and the AP is not enough. I want a gold AP, and I want, a second home in Marbella, and I want. And I was on that trajectory where it was just material possession, addiction. And Marwa passed away obviously in Miami, and we chose to bury her in Egypt. And that was during June 30th, which was the Grand Revolution, right? There
Yeah,
was
2013. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so the streets are packed and nobody knows what the heck is going on, and it was chaos by every definition of the
Yeah.
word. And we managed to get her on a Egypt Air flight and bring the body back and commence with the funeral arrangements. But anyways, the story for me was none of us really knew how much good Marwa did while she was alive. Okay, until that funeral. And after burying Marwa, I come out of the grave, and there's the Egyptian traditions, and I'm shaking hands with people, and I met so many different faces that I didn't know, and I would say, "How do you know my sister?" And one would say, "I was the coffee boy in the office where she worked, and I'm on dialysis, and she would collect money every month from the employees to pay for my dialysis." I met a diabetic who was imprisoned because he couldn't meet his debt obligations. Then Marwa collected money and got his debt relieved, and he was released. I met no less than 50 people that are not family, they're not relatives, they're not
In a very
coworkers.
quiet
There are people that
and very
Marwa
discreet
had
way,
done
she helped them.
something for, that impacted, she touched their lives. And my epiphany or my learning of that day is that's
Yeah.
really all you leave behind. It's the fingerprints that you hope will withstand the waves of time. And these fingerprints are how you made others feel
Hmm.
while you were still here. Okay. And that moment was a defining moment in my life. That's when I wore nothing but black t-shirts and white t-shirts, average run-of-the-mill clothes. I drive a Ford. I live in a normal home. It doesn't matter what's in the bank account. Tens of millions, hundreds of millions, or tens of dollars.
You can't take
It
it
does
with you
not
anyway,
matter
Mo. So,
anymore.
yeah, I agree with you completely.
It does. I relinquished that, and I focused on my mentorship. I focused on my pursuit of foundational help, what I'm truly passionate about, gender equality and child or children plights around the world, and the list goes on. So those two experiences really helped shape
Yeah.
my adult life. One in courage, and the other in what true meaning of life is.
And I'm sure that somewhere in your psyche, Marwa's passing, and even your wife's illness was something that spurred you on to do your own thing with Grub Tech. I mean, you decided life is short. Maybe it's time to do something that you maybe wanted to do forever and hadn't even realized.
Absolutely. You
Yeah,
yeah, we really never fathom how short of a window of time we have on this planet until it's over.
exactly,
So
exactly.
one of my mentors once said, "Do you want to go into your pine box in pristine condition in a suit and all done up, or do you want to go broken, bruised, and beat up?"
Yeah,
And I'm like, "The
having
latter."
really lived. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Give me
Exactly,
that.
exactly. Having really lived. Yeah,
Yeah, man.
absolutely.